This is Lights Out. I am Faisal Khan, and welcome to episode 7 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. And with me over Skype, I'm joined by the panel, Ron, Mohsin Gulsher, and the Walsh Meister, Luke Anthony Walsh. Lads, how's it going?
All very good, mate.
Not too bad at all.
How are we finding isolation?
It's as hard as you want to make it. I mean, Sky Sports Boxing have been putting a lot of past fights on their YouTube channel. Recently, I've been watching Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor from 2017, that fight?
17, yeah.
God, that seems like ages ago. I also watched the Vladimir Klitschko Tyson Fury fight from December 2015, which I'll talk a bit more about a little bit later on. But yeah, there's plenty of boxing content out there and some amazing fights that I'm going back and watching, and you think, you know, it certainly passes the time, and you know, there's some amazing performances to be rewatched over and over again, and it's all free. So what more could you want?
It's a really good podcast as well. You know, I've been listening to whilst on my run, so that's kept me occupied. And yeah, like Luke, I've been watching a few past, you know, battles. You know, YouTube and Sky Sports.
Mentioned it because I remember the other night I was watching the Hatton Mayweather fight. What a fight that was! You know, the build up to it. You know, Ricky and trying to conquer America by beating the great Floyd Mayweather. Of course, it never happened, but it was a great effort, and it's kind of like moves us on to our topic today. But before we do get started with episode 7, just want to remind the viewers that if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and of course follow us on all the social media platforms. We currently are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our social media links are in the description below in the video. Let's get started. Today's topic: who are the top British fighters of all time? Picking the number 1 British fighter of all time is hard enough. Picking the top 5 is something else. And Ron, what qualities do you need to get in top 5 list of all time? Top 5 British fighters of all time.
When I think of all the previous boxers who when I've made my list, I thought about amateur pedigree. You know, thinking about their performances in the Olympics. Then I think about, you know, in their professional ranks, you know, world titles that they've won, how long they've kept those titles, how many defenses they've made, you know, whether they're going to other opponents' backyards to kind of defend titles or go winning titles. You know, I look at character, not just in the ring, but outside of the ring as well. You know, when we think of people like Ali, you know, for what he represented, he wasn't just a boxer; he was more than that. You know, charisma, character. I mean, these are the kind of things that I think about when I think of a top, you know, boxers, especially in British boxing.
I completely agree. I think it's about looking at the criteria and thinking, well, okay, have they done this? Have they done that? I mean, the Olympics is one. Their pro and amateur records is another. And I think everyone that we will mention as on our top 5 is world champions. And you know, it's one thing to be a good boxer, but it's another thing to be a world champion and then go on to defend it, and for it to be a successful reign. And I think that sort of separates the men from the boys. And when you're the best of the best in your division, that's what makes you stand out as one of the greats.
Yeah, 100% agree with you guys. And obviously, you know, the good thing about the boxing world is, you know, before the professional side of it becomes the amateur side of it. And if you look at some of what the British fighters have done on the amateur level, you know, you look at Lennox Lewis and Amir Khan and, of course, Anthony Joshua, you know, all these fighters have gone on and have won Olympic medals and have become world champions. And if you look at the current British boxing scene, you look at some of the names that have achieved so much in their career already, you know, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Josh Warrington, Carl Frampton, you know, Chris Eubank Jr., Amir Khan, Kell Brook, Josh Taylor. That's just the names that are currently still boxing. Then you look at fighters that are up and coming right now, such as Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, Josh Kelly. But then you have to compare to the past: David Hay, Prince Nassim, Lennox Lewis, Kelly, Frott, Groves, Eubank Sr., Ricky Hatton, Calzaghe, Macronelli, McGuigan, James DeGale, Frank Bruno, Johnny Nelson. And if you really want to go back to the early stages, Joe Bugner, Henry Cooper, these guys will go down, in the history of British boxing for what they've achieved. But certainly when I talk about the top five, they've winning world titles, achieving something in the amateur background, definitely it fills in that criteria. Ron, would you say that we're blessed right now in terms of British boxing to where it is today?
Well,
yeah, precisely. I mean, sort of before the coronavirus lockdown, sort of at time of recording, we were going to have Joe Joyce against Daniel Dubois, and that would have been, I reckon, one of the biggest up and coming heavyweight fights in a very, very long time. And who knows what would have happened that night, and what the result would have been, and what that could have done in the sort of the heavyweight picture. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We're in this golden age since the millennium, and even before then, British boxers have been at the top of their game. We've had Lennox Lewis, we've had Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Yeah, two prime British boxers at the top of the heavyweight division. And we've had Carl Froch, of course, George Groves. Their big fight at Wembley is a standout moment. And you look at these fighters and you look at what they've been able to accomplish, and they have to be considered as some of the best.
Ron, we've got the heavyweight scene right now. All the marbles are with the UK fighters, Fury and Joshua. We've also got a world champion two world champions from Britain in the middleweight division. The super lightweight division, we've got world champions. Of course, we've got a world champion in the heavyweight division, all British boxers. Would you say that, Ron? Would you say that this is the best time we've seen in a long time for British boxing?
Yeah, I mean, it's unheard of. I mean, Americans have always ruled the roost when it comes to heavyweight boxing, but now they haven't got anyone, there, and that's probably kind of hurting them, their egos and their pride, because the Americans really. But in terms, it's a great time to be a boxing fan, if you're a Brit. You got so many fighters out there, and what I love about them as well, they're not afraid to go abroad and fight. I mean, we just saw Anthony Joshua going into Saudi Arabia. We've seen Tyson Fury going to Dusseldorf. And his last few fights have been all in the US. Recently we saw Cal Yafai as well. Kind of defending his title against Chocolatito. Brilliant. All credit to them.
I think one thing that we've got to take into aspect is that the fact that these current fighters are looking to broaden their horizons and move on into the US scene. And I think we talk about a boxer that's really opened the door. And for me, my number one pick in that top five list, and obviously I'm going to reveal my top five list right now, I'd have to go for Prince Naseem Hamed, because I look back to when he kicked that door down for the British fighters to move on into the US scene. I think Naseem Hamed plays a massive part in that. He's my number one pick, not only because of what he achieved taking Britain over to the US. You look at his style, his movement, his flamboyant personality, the cockiness about him and everything he had about him. He sort of backed up in the ring. Yes, not the greatest of endings to his career. We all remember what happened against Barrera, but still one fighter that really took the Brits over to America and sort of knocked that door down and really opened that field for British fighters. Number two for me, Joe Calzaghe, 46-0, retired undefeated. Not many fighters can say that they've retired undefeated. He is only a partner of a small list of fighters from the UK that have actually retired undefeated. 46-0, beat some great fighters. And you just got to look as well as to what he achieved. His father goes down as a Hall of Famer as well, as a trainer. Number three, I've got Lennox Lewis, the last British undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Achieved so much, went to the Olympics as well, had a great amateur background, beat Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, beat Vitaly Klitschko, avenged those defeats to Hasim Rahman and Oliver McCall. And a great heavyweight fighter, and the last heavyweight to say that was proudly the undisputed. Number four, Tyson Fury, two-time current heavyweight champion of the world. And the beauty of the Tyson Fury story is simple. Defied all the odds, got through the trials and the tribulations, and came from mental health issues, and has become an ambassador now to people for mental health. And one thing I love about Tyson Fury is how he's won them 2 world titles. Went to Dusseldorf and beat the great Vladimir Klitschko, and then just absolutely bullied, not once but twice bullied the feared puncher in Deontay Wilder. And number 5 for me, I've got to say Carl Froch. Former world champion, fought the best as well, no doubt about it. Retired on great circumstances at Wembley in front of 80,000, as he likes to say constantly over and over again. That defeat to Michael Kessler, went all the way to America and fought the great Andre Ward. A great product for British boxing, and another massive face. And I actually feel as if I'm doing a disservice to leaving out the likes of a Barry McGuigan or a Chris Eubank Sr. So many fighters there that you could just add to the list. That's my top 5. Luke, your top 5.
Well, my number 1 is Audley Harrison. I'm joking. I'm joking. I definitely. Number 1, Tyson Fury. No question about it. I think I've always been a Tyson Fury fan. Just growing up, we've seen him fight Derek Chisora. He actually did a public training session in Luton in 2013 prior to the Chisora fight, and that sort of brought me back into boxing and being interested in it. And then to see him go from fighting Chisora to that monumental win. As I said, watching it back in 2015, where he put himself on the map, and he said, "Right, I am the heavyweight champion of the world," and to beat Klitschko where he hadn't been beaten in best part of a decade, if not more, was such a huge achievement. Yes, with his mental health struggles and everything else, but he fought back. He slimmed down. He fought hard, and he became an absolute beacon for mental health and for again beating the odds. Unlucky with the draw against Deontay Wilder, but he came back even harder and he floored him and he won. And he put the 1 L on Deontay Wilder's career, and somebody who is dangerous, violently dangerous. Number 2, Anthony Joshua. I think because he hasn't been able to show his potential yet at the moment, even though he lost and then fought Ruiz again. Everyone is still waiting for Joshua against Fury. Then we'll know who the best of the best is. 3 has to be Barry McGuigan for me. He was such an influential boxer in the 80s and 90s. Again, became a successful trainer, and his gym, which produced the likes of Carl Frampton and other Northern Irish boxers as well. That's definitely one of the highlights. Of course, 1985 at Loftus Road is a monumental fight.
Shane McGuigan.
He fought a Kenny Frodo once upon a time as well, so that's worth a mention. Number 4 has to be. Number 4 has to be Carl Froch. Yeah. Again, 80,000 Wembley. That punch, that fight against George Groves. I mean, it was a night to remember, and it sort of led on to the bigger fights and the bigger names coming to Wembley Stadium and laying it all on the line. Number 5, it's got to be Lennox. It's got to be Lennox Lewis, because what he represented in the 90s and being on top for so long is sort of an achievement in itself. And even for me, to draw anything apart between those top 5 is very, very slim.
Great list, great choice. Barry McGuigan definitely. You mentioned I felt it was a bit of a disservice to leave him out, and I think Barry McGuigan had a fantastic career, a great pundit. His son's become a fantastic trainer, training the likes of Josh Taylor and of course George Groves to world title glory. That just goes to say a lot about the McGuigan family, and I'm glad you brought him up, because Barry McGuigan, a great fighter, and obviously come up at a time where it was really tough for the Northern Irish community, but we were just have him down here in Kenilworth Road once upon a time, and hopefully that's something we can get know, in the future, there's more boxing at Luton, seeing as it's growing. Ron, let's go. Let's get your top 5 British UK fighters of all time.
Number one for me has to be Lennox Lewis.
Yeah.
You know, first British champion in the 21st century. Like I said earlier, I mean, the Americans bossed that the heavyweight division. I thought he fought some great competitors, you know, like Evander Holyfield, like you mentioned. Riddick Bowe ducked him, didn't want to know him. Beat Mike Tyson, beat Vitaly Klitschko. He avenged all his losses, and he did that all abroad, you know, all in the US. A lot of these fights were, you know, abroad. So fair play to him, and that was unheard of back in the day, where British fighters did not leave, you know, the British Isles that often. But, you know, fair play to him. Number 2 for me is going to be Joe Calzaghe, undefeated, 46-0, unblemished record. You know, fought some, you know, top fighters in his time. Bernard Hopkins. He fought Roy Jones Jr. You can't knock him for that. I think, you know, Pride of Wales. I mean, fair play to him. Number 3, I'm going to say Nazim Hamed with the Prince, just for his pure sheer entertainment as a boxer. You know, his character, he was very, you know, the Americans were very well known for being very brash and very outrageous, and, you know, he kind of threw it back in their faces. You know, I remember when he went over to the US and he fought Kevin Kelly. Remember that shootout there, where Naz dropped 3 times in that fight, and he ended up winning that fight as well. So, I mean, that was what you call drama. And obviously, you know, he had some other fights. I mean, he was a world champion at the age of 21 when he beat, was it Robinson in Wales, you know, to a very kind of tense crowd there. So, you know, for a young man to achieve that. Number 4, now, it was a toss-up, but I've gone for Ricky Hatton, Hitman Hatton. I thought Ricky Hatton was really good. For what he did in his division. You know, think about his top fights, Costa Zoo, Castillo, you know. So it's a shame how his career kind of filtered out towards the end as well. And lastly, how many have I got? Is that number 5 now?
Yes.
4. Okay, number 5, I'm going for Tyson Fury. The reason why Tyson Fury is not higher up on my list, I think, is you know, either Tyson Fury or AJ. But I think what I'd like to see with Tyson Fury is him winning that. Now he's got that title, make a few defenses of it. Because when he won that against Klitschko in Dusseldorf, it's a shame that he went off the rails, and we know all his mental health issues. But what would have happened? You know, that's a question mark. What would have happened in that rematch with Klitschko, which they tried to rearrange on 2 separate occasions? I mean, there was many reasons. But yeah, that's my top 5. But there's a lot of other honourable mentions as well that we could have mentioned. Eubanks, Ben, McGuigan, as Luke mentioned earlier, Henry Cooper, who I've been doing my little kind of archive research as well. So there you go.
I mean, listen, you know, hopefully people out there will have their opinion on this podcast of ours. And like I said, it's one that you could debate all day long. Probably our 5 that we've mentioned. Maybe someone won't agree with our 5 and have a complete different 5. But I think the fact that we've discussed this and it is up for debate and it's up for discussion just goes to show you how lucky we are to have these current fighters representing Britain, and of course from the past and from the future and from the current scene of boxing. Britain has been blessed to have had some great figures represent Britain in the professional and the amateur side of boxing. But listen, no, that, I mean, like I said, really, really hard. And I do feel we've done some disservice leaving people out. But my 5 were just strictly based on achievements, performances. You know, some of them had obviously amateur backgrounds as well. But I think my 5 sort of justifies itself, and I've got to agree. Your 5 as well. Both of your 5 were very, very good. Like what Ron said about us wanting to see Tyson Fury defend the world title and see what is as the hunted rather than the hunter.
Well, this is it. Sort of at this sort of time of recording, the Joshua Pulev fight is off. due to the coronavirus, and kindly Pulev has donated half of his purse to help medics and help to help the fight against coronavirus. But Eddie Hearn has come out and said this could open the door and could bring forward the discussion for Fury against Joshua, as harsh as it sounds. And even though Bob Arum sort of hinted it towards it as well, that it could happen, this, we could end up with it after all. Whenever that might be, who knows, and when it will be safe to do so. But I think I've said it all along, Faisal. Ever since I sort of joined Lights Out Boxing and interviewed the likes of Frank Warren and sort of within the boxing world, I've said we need Wembley Stadium. We need Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury, and we'll find out who the best of the best is.
Ron, your response to that?
I agree. I mean, unfortunately, with the corona kind of kicked in now, everything's on hold now. As British fans, we're crying out for that AJ Tyson Fury fight. And, the winner of that, I think the three of us might have to sit together and reevaluate our list. But none of us have really put, I think, apart from Luke, has put AJ on their top 5. If AJ wins that, is he the greatest of all time? Does he jump up to the top of the list?
It's not even that. The way that Anthony Joshua rose to the top in such fashion, going from heavyweight gold in London 2012 to being signed by Eddie Hearn. He had his professional debut at Wembley Stadium, did he not? On the undercard of, I'm trying to think of the fight now. Might have been the Carl Froch. No,
the Froch. But no, either way, listen. I mean, it is a fight.
But even to sort of the rise to the top that he's had, and beating some of the greats along the way, Dillian White, beating Derek Chisora, he made the O2 his fortress before he sort of took on Vladimir Klitschko at Wembley Stadium, and that monumental night as well, and then gone on to sort of defend it. Yes, if you take Andy Ruiz Jr. Out of the equation and sort of eliminate that, he's had a near flawless record, and he's only had 23, 24 fights, and it's incredible.
It definitely does make for. I mean, I've seen great fights in the past. British wise, now I'm lucky enough to have lived through 2 fights between Eubank Senior and Nigel Benn, and of course I got this. I've seen AJ versus White a couple of years ago, not to mention Froch versus Groves, but I think the real icing on the real icing on the top, is the big AJ versus Fury fight. And I think the beauty of it now is the fact that the winner of that fight can call himself the king of the heavyweight division, because it's kind of like you've got a Premier League title race where both teams have got the same goal difference, the same amount of points, the same amount of games played. This is the one fight that we need to be made. It needs to be made as soon as possible. I get that Pulev has a mandatory, is a mandatory, and I get that Deontay Wilder's cashed in a rematch with Tyson Fury. For the sake of the heavyweight division, it's been such a long time where we can actually all turn around and say, this is the man. And I think, now that we're just one fight away, I mean, what a bitch it would be if they did fight and it ended up at the draw. I could potentially move to a second fight or a third fight, but the point I'm trying to make is it's the first fight, and I think for everyone's best interest, it happens next. Pulev and Deontay Wilder, I respect the fact that they have they're rightfully so are the next challengers for the 2 world champions, but I think for the sake of the heavyweight division, let's make that fight happen next. And then, you know what? Who knows? Maybe we might have to reevaluate our top 5, and you probably would have to put a Tyson Fury or AJ as number 1.
Well, it's not even that. Sort of from then on, we then have the likes of Dubois coming through. We have Dillian White and Derek Chisora stating their case. We have other fighters coming through the ranks, at breakneck speed, who can say, right, I'm next. I want a challenge. Let's see who's got it. And you look at the likes of Derek Chisora and Dillian White, who are world title level, and they're waiting for their chance. They're waiting for that one slip up or one eliminator, and it's there. They have that opportunity.
Ron, your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, it's an exciting time for boxing, but everything's on pause and hold at the moment. There's a lot of hypotheticals. We'll only know once these mandatories get out of the way. I mean, for AJ. But I've got another question for both of you. All right. You know, when we came up with our top 5 list, both of us, a lot of us, I think all 3 of us mentioned Joe Calzaghe, and who wins? And Faisal, you interviewed good Calzaghe as well.
It's on our YouTube channel. Go check it out.
Who wins? Go on, boys.
When did Luke?
Well,
Listen,
we put them in our top 5s. Now, them two could have fought each other.
Carl Froch, top fighter, you know, terrific power, you know, great knowledge on the sport. But Joe Calzaghe to me was just a level above, and you know, I feel a bit bad saying that because Carl Froch was a great fighter, but for me, as Carl Froch said in the interview, I was 46-0 for a reason. So I think I would edge to Joe Calzaghe.
46-0 compared to I fought at Wembley inside 80,000 people. What's the more legitimate claim? Yeah, Joe Calzaghe, no question.
Who would win it for you, Calzaghe or Froch?
Calzaghe. I'm a Calzaghe fan. I mean, I think, yeah, they both fought that level of opposition, but I think Calzaghe, you know, there was that rumor that they were, you know, towards the end of his career, they were going to fight. But, you know, Froch has it that, he was ducking me, he didn't want to know. I think it was just time. I mean, it wasn't meant to be.
Oh, listen, another debate we could discuss all day long, but unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on episode 7 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. And you know what, you guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It is completely free. Get following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check out all of our playlists. Check out the social media platforms. And once again, don't forget to subscribe. And to all of our viewers, to all of our subscribers, stay safe at all times, especially at a time like this with the current coronavirus situation. Luke, thank you very much for your time. Ron, thank you very much for your time. Pleasure as always, guys. I'm Faisal Khan. Thank you for listening and watching Lights Out.